gentlemen.
Hello.
What's up, guys?
That's your wife's wishes and my wife wishes. Not exactly. Who wants to get us started?
Good shirt.
Randy? What? You getting us started? Me?
Yes, please.
At what point would be optimal to have a starting quarterback and a starting running back named, and when that happens, what are you looking for at both positions?
Yeah. I think honestly, Randy, that's a great point. For us, it's going to take camp. I think it's any time there's competition and, man, you got a lot of young guys competing to be at the top. Let me start with running back because I think it's a little bit easier. And the easiness there is, I would say after this was our sixth practice today, I feel confident that there's five guys that could start on our football team right now at tailback. And I think probably more than ever that you've seen us play, you can see tailback by committee, which is really good in my opinion, and I think it's going to make the competition from literally now through the entire fall, you're going to have to practice great to be the first guy that steps on the field to be the starting tailback. I'll go down that list for you. I think you talk about Eli Sanders, and I think Eli has, come in and really build off of what he did those last two football games, had a really good spring, and in my opinion, has helped his body physically to go be more the complete tailback. And so, again, I would say off to a really good start. Then you talk Cartavius, I think physically what he's done to transform himself, pound for pound, one of the strongest kids in our football program. And again, a guy that's got truly complete tailback tendencies, of what he's done. A.J. Harris, I really felt like kind of was getting his feet wet during spring ball, and it really helped A.J. to have a summer here. It really helped him to kind of dive into the playbook. He's a physical football player. He can do a lot from pass protection to run game to, he's also got really good hands. And I think the thing that's probably surprised all of us so far is the competition and the physicality of these two young tailbacks that came in here. And, I think both of them have had really great moments. They've had high-end flashes. And as any young football player comes into the program, can you sustain that? But I would also say both guys have come in and demanded to be in the competition. And I think when that happens, that's a huge positive. So that room, top to bottom, as deep as we've been, top to bottom, I think you got five guys that actually can compete to be the starting tailback. And, again, you're not going to know who that starter is. And quite honestly, equal to who the starter is that we got to find out offensively in those critical moments in the football game, who's the guy that's going to be on the field. And, I think we were searching for that even last year. And I don't know if we had great clarity at times where I feel even more confident that, number one, there's five guys that can be every down tailbacks, and number two, it's going to be a great race when we've had that. As I said, last week, the cream usually rises to the top of it. When you talk quarterback play, the two things that I think are absolutely critically important, and I think we talked about this again last week, the two things that I need to see, number one is, can you lead the team? Good or bad, can you be the guy that everybody in that locker room believes in, and can you lead the football team? And then I think the second thing is you got to take care of the football. When you've seen us play great quarterback play at Iowa State over the last, 7 years, what those guys have done elite is they've been able to take care of the football. I think all those other things will come, but I think those two things are first and foremost, and then have the ability to go through it. And, we've kind of split those reps, to be honest with you, even through practice of all three guys. You've seen all three guys get reps. Again, positive for me is that group has, I think, really great to have a summer to grow from what did they do in spring ball, where those guys all shared reps that practice in the spring with the ones, to what did I learn, what did I grow, take that into the summer, and then really have the opportunity to kind of come into fall camp with some confidence. And yet every day, there's good and bad from all of them, and the ability to grow forward. But those would be the two things that are critically important in my opinion.
The fact, that the fact that the quarterback is generally, the most important player on the team because he handles the ball most, other than the center. Do you you say playing back, running back by committee is fine. What about quarterback by committee?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at our past, and, I think if you go back to the University of Toledo, and certainly you look at when Joel was here with us, and you've seen us play multiple players in a single game, and that's certainly not out of the question. I mean, I think those are things where you evaluate that as we continue to get forward and move forward. What I would say today, if we were playing a football game, you would go into the game and all three players would play in the football game. Now, is that where we're at as we continue to move through camp? That's why you have practice in camp and you continue to watch it. But, I think those are things for us that we would certainly look into. And, at Toledo for, really for 4 years, we played two quarterbacks, through the entire game. And we've certainly done that at our time here when you saw Jacob and certainly Joel, and then you saw Kyle and Joel. We know how to handle those situations for sure.
Jyrell was not a guy you mentioned among your running backs. Is that because he's not part of your plans or he's not practicing?
Jyrell has not practiced yet.
And that's why you didn't mention him, I imagine?
Yeah, he just has not practiced.
What is your field goal kicking situation right now?
Yeah, I think same situation. I think that the positive for us there is really, really great competition. We've got a healthy Keegan Shackelford. Keegan was hurt last year, hurt his hamstring and quad in fall camp, and so he really just took the kickoff duties for us last year. But you would say early in fall camp, he was a contender to be the field goal kicker. So he's been healthy. Obviously, you have Jace, and Jace is another year under his belt and really worked. And then we added a young man right at the end of the spring, Chase Contreras, who was the field goal kicker in Nebraska and started his career at Iowa Western. And man, he's been really impressive early on in fall camp. So 3 guys that I would tell you are competing and very similar. I think you're going to find out who's going to rise to the top. You got to continue to put those guys in stressful situations. Man, we had field goal today with, some red zone offense, and it was good to see those guys. All guys did a good job today, but I think, again, the test of time will tell. But I feel, again, completely different spot than a year ago. And again, a year ago, I would say as much on me as anybody. You just felt like with some injury standpoint, you end up putting a true freshman into some tough situations. I don't feel like we're that football team this year. You got some guys that have done it, have kicked in critical moments, and I think the competition there is hot and heavy right now.
What was last year like for Jace? I mean, obviously, highs.
Low lows, yeah. I think no matter what position you would play, to have the high of the highs and the lows of the lows, that's really hard. I mean, I don't think, we would be foolish not to say that wasn't a mental grind on Jace. But I think one of the things that I really do appreciate about Jace Gilbert is, and I told you, here's a kid that started as the quarterback in high school, that started on defense and was also the kicker, right? And he punted and he did it all. He's the guy that was a starting point guard on a championship basketball team, an elite baseball player. And so the thing I love about Jace is competitive excellence. And I know I talked about that again last week, just as a team. He brings that. And so I think the mentality of what he did in terms of what his process was January through the summer to come back and be a better version of himself than he was last year. We're really proud of him, and a guy that we all believe in as the human being. Obviously, the skill and the fundamental, he's going to continue to work forward on it.
Similar to the quarterback question Randy asked, when it comes to kickers, would you, I guess maybe this is obvious, but would you prefer to have one guy that is going to be kick a 30-yard field goal, kick a 50-yard field goal, kick every PAT, where you're not making a decision every time you guys score, or like it's right in the, whose range is this, who's feeling good, who's missed 3 field goals?
And Travis, that I think the simple answer would be yes, absolutely. But I also, players, formations, plays, and I've said that a million times, and everybody chuckles, but that is coaching too, right? You got to do a great job of trying to put your team in the best position to be successful and play to the strengths of who those players are. and we know that the margin of error is so small that you want to try to give every guy his strength when he steps on the field. And I do think the neat thing about all three of these guys is you would not say that leg strength would be a challenge to those guys. So I think I would have the same answer, probably that consistency standpoint. That's who you want to go with. And again, I think hopefully fall camp unfolds that. If we have to continue that competition through the early part of the season, we will. But you want the guy that you believe in and consistency that can do it all. But the great thing for me is all three of those kids are great humans. They're great competitors, and you see them cheering for each other. And that's a hard spot, and there's only no different than quarterback. At times there's one of those guys on the field. So we're excited that they all bring different strengths, but one of the things that we're not concerned about is leg strength with those guys.
Matt, you touched on it on Media Day with Coach Langs having to build a program from scratch. Did he share any details, or are there any details about what he did that most impressed you when you wanted to bring him on?
Yeah, I think, Rob, the biggest thing that was relatable to me is understanding when you come and you start your coaching career at the ground up. And twofold when I say that, Jordan's first job was Division III football, played Division III football, comes from a family of educators. His father was a great high school football coach. And then, Jordan goes to a really, really good Division III program. And then, man, your first job out of the gate is to start from scratch, build a facility, start a football team, recruit to not playing games, and then all of a sudden playing games to then having success. I think all those things were intriguing to me, and I think Jordan certainly polished in how he communicates with young people, how he communicates with the team, and then the overall vision of, I think when you think special teams, it does serve every aspect of the program, right? It's about the ball, it's about field position, and again, when we've been really good on special teams, we've won in that margin too. Field position, starting field position, helping our defense out, making sure that we're giving them the longest field to be able to defend. And I think those were all things to me that getting the big picture, understanding that it's not just about you or this, it's about serving the team and making sure that the kids would buy into that vision. I thought that was really important.
And pertaining to special teams, I know you've said repeatedly that scheme is not necessarily going to change, and scheme's not necessarily an issue when there are issues. Is it just a matter of like one guy goes the wrong way in punt coverage, or it's obvious when someone misses a field goal that was not a good special teams play, but how do you kind of assess what went wrong before and how it's being fixed now?
Yeah, I think for us, again, when you look at our coverage units, I feel like we've been very strong the last 2 years. I think the last time we had real issues in those units was, that 2020 COVID year, that first game, and we can remember that. And, there were those where a guy missed here or there, and boy, it ended really bad. It cost us a football game. But I really feel like we've been strong in our punt coverage. We were net punt. We were one of the tops in the country. You looked at, our kickoff coverage team. We were 7th in the country last year going into the last game at TCU. And, nobody covered more kicks in college football last year than Iowa State did. And so when I talk about, some of that being, we need to get some balls in the back of the end zone. We need to not have to cover. When you look a year prior to, and you have Andrew Mevis, we were the least amount of coverage kicks in college football. And so, again, how do you develop your specialists to be at your best? How do you then, and I would say the areas in the return unit, where can we be better? How can we, be better returning punts? How do we not let the ball hit the ground and force that 15-yard balls on the ground? And how do we do a great job of that? I think we know how. It's not a schematical issue, but again, it's, the confidence of the punt returner going to get the football. All those little details that are in there, I think those are things we can be much better at. But, again, Kene Nwangu's here in 2020, and we're the best kick return team in the country and in the Big 12. And so, a lot of it is the who. I think we're stronger in all those areas. I think some of those young pups may be guys that can even help us in some of those areas, but it's finding who the players are. It's the players, and then let's make sure that the scheme around them gives them the best chance to affect the game in a positive way.
Obviously, replacing Will McDonald and MJ Anderson isn't an easy task or anything like that. I was wondering on the defensive line specifically, especially the younger guys, who's kind of separated themselves from the rest of the pack right now.
Yeah, the ones right now, across the board, if especially at those end spots, you look at that group and, Tyler Onyedin, I think a lot like some of those freshman football or some of those young football players a year ago at running back. If you look at his last 4 games and what he had the ability to do and the impact that he had on the football game, it was really special. I think he has got a chance to be one of the elite defensive linemen that we've had here. He's got great strength. He's got great pass rush ability. A little bit different than those guys because he's probably the guy that's, he's a 275, almost 280 pounds and, got great twitch, but he's also got the physicality to play a 6 technique. Joey Peterson, Joey has, it's like, it kind of reminds me of his brother a little bit in Zach where, he was one of the best special teams players for us, great on kickoff coverage, was the 2 defensive end, and yet, you look at the game and you saw him affect the defensive side of the football multiple times a year ago. And Joey has just transformed himself. I mean, physically looks exceptional, has really got off to a great start in fall camp. So I think those 2 guys are pillars, that you can build off of. Ikenna is a young man that was a redshirt freshman a year ago that redshirted. I think we were constantly in the fight. Is this guy ready to play for us or not? Do we get him on the field? Played a little bit on special teams, but we were able to save his redshirt year. I don't know if anybody looks better than Ike. You're talking about length, speed, size, has really had a great start to camp. I think really challenged him coming out of the spring. If we can get that guy to play what he's capable of playing, I think you're really, really excited about, certainly what he brings to the table for us. Trent Jones is a young man that has, been on the verge for us, a guy that walked on our program. And, Trent has really kind of risen up through the course of last football season and this year. And then so you talk about some of those newcomers in there. I think, until we get there, Toby coming from Auburn, you're talking about size, length, and ability, the ability to kind of play the run and react to the pass. Samuel Same, we've talked about, I thought really had a great spring, gives you kind of Will-like pass rush ability with twitch and ability. Lot of competition across the board. Miles Mendezun moved in from linebacker to defensive end, brings some of that. So I think as we see, and to me, it's easy to talk about the ones. I think we all know we're going to be best on defense when it's the 2s and the 3s that can get in the football game and play 20 to 15 reps and really be able to affect the football game. And our 1s are really, really good. And our 2s, if they're able to play at that high level, we're going to be in a great spot.
How special of a moment was it for you and the staff yesterday to offer Ben Nickel a scholarship?
Yeah. I think for all of us, those are those moments where sometimes with scholarship numbers, sometimes with different things, you guys deserve scholarships and you feel like, man, they've worked for it and you just aren't able to do it because it doesn't work out. But, in this situation for Ben, this kid's journey, just phenomenal. Came to us 2 years ago after the COVID season in 2020. Ben was the captain as a sophomore in McPherson College playing NAIA football. And, he comes to us and just one of the hardest working kids on our team. He's a 41-inch vertical jump, a guy that came in. We played him at wide receiver in the 2021 season where he redshirted, in 2022 fall camp. And I had said this when we were talking about giving Ben the scholarship. We're like, man, can this guy maybe help us on defense? And he's going to be an elite special teams guy. And I went to Ben and really talked to him about coming over and transitioning to the defensive side of the football. So, gosh, you've asked so much of this kid. He goes over on the defensive side. If you talk about special teams tackles, Ben was second on our team in special teams tackles, ended up starting on all 4 special teams for us last year. And then you look at what he's physically done, and you'll see Ben's completely transformed. Another guy put on 15 pounds. If you would say DBs in the first part of fall camp, a guy you weren't, I don't know if you were say counting on him or not counting on him, and now all of a sudden it's like, man, we're going to have to play this guy on defense. He's demanding us that he gets on the field. Man, what he brings to our football team in a multitude of different ways is really special. And then how he goes about his process. I think if you asked our football team, man, guys that reflect the culture and what we want to to stand for in this football program, I think every kid in our program would talk about who Ben is as much as what he does as a football player. So you throw all that together, and it was a no-brainer. And I think you saw even in the video that was released the emotion of our kids for Ben. I think it tells you a lot about who he is and really what he's about.
We got time for two more.
Hey, Matt, in speaking with Jared Hubbard last week at Media Day, he talked about, kind of how Coach Clanton has really simplified things on the offensive line in terms of, maybe less scheme, less thinking, and just
Yeah.
kind of being more aggressive. How have you seen that implemented, and what impact have you seen from it so far?
Well, I still think that starts at the top. And, I think that's one of the things where we talked about, is the scheme the issue? No, but maybe the how we do what we do in some areas is maybe challenging us, whether that's wording or complication. Man, how do we simplify and, across the board on offense, and how do we allow our kids to play fast and really kind of play, we know when our kids play fast, their physicality and aggression has the ability to be at max speed. And, I think that give a lot of credit to Coach Shieldhouse and the trickle-down effect then. I think Ryan, that's a master of the fundamental, and I think also simplifying the scheme as well. And, I think one of the things I do really like on this offensive side of the ball, you got Coach Pauley's been an offensive coordinator. You talk about Ryan's been an offensive coordinator. You talk about Coach Shieldhouse has been an offensive coordinator. Obviously Mouse has been here a long time with us. And so I think one of the nice things that group has is taking that challenge that I gave is, man, can we simplify and can we allow our kids to play with confidence on the field? And I think you've started to see that. And I think no place can it be more effective where the O-line and the D-line are the fastest point of attack on the football field. And I think that offensive line has to have confidence coming off the football and understanding what's going on. So, I think it's been a top-down mentality. And obviously one of the strengths that I talked about when we hired Ryan, he's a really great teacher. And I think that starts when everybody's aligned to that vision, and then certainly the ability, then the one-on-one situation with the group, can you do a great job translating that? And he's done a great job. And I think our kids are a lot more confident in that area for sure.
When it comes to special teams, is the emphasis or starting point of eliminating mistakes different than offense and defense? Because it seems like the mistakes there can be so outsized, and
Yeah.
they lead to touchdowns, they lead to field goal, they lead to momentum in a way that maybe is a little different than the other two phases.
Well, I think the funny, not funny, but I think the statistic that's so important there is 17% of the plays that you play in a football game are special teams plays. So sometimes you say, man, it's a third of the game, but it's really not, right? Like 17% of the plays. So, but those 17% of the plays can be absolutely critical in the result of the football game. And so you're right. It starts with how do you not beat yourself, understanding that the ball is the most critical piece of any special teams play. And then how does that translate into the success of the offense or the defense, or a win or a loss? And, I think that's something we have stressed here for a long time. But I think the reality of understanding the criticalness of 17%, but, man, so small of a percentage of the game is played there, but how critical those reps are singularly throughout the football game and the impact that it can have on the game. And so, man, from how we practice it, the amount of what we practice to, the detail and the intent of that area, I think it's absolutely critical for our success.
Obviously, you would want special teams to be a plus. You want big plays there. But if you had to just accept mundane and neutral, would that be okay, given everything we just talked about?
Would Randy be happy with that? I don't know.
No,
Yeah, probably not. No, there's and I'm joking, Randy. There's times where I think some of that is situational, right? I think there's times where you just want to secure the football. There's times where you just want to regain possession for the offense. And yet I think where some of our areas where we can improve, when there's opportunities to make a play, we got to make the play. And I think that is something that we are stressing, because there have been opportunities, and we've blocked punts. We've done some game-changing things to completely change the game. But in my opinion, you know, you're right. I think some of the bombs that can go off in special teams, that's what you're trying to negate and do a great job. But I think the point on sometimes in a punt return or sometimes in a kickoff return situationally, man, the most important thing you can do is you can get the ball back to your offense. Man, if we're punting the football, the net punt maybe at times may not be as important as, man, getting that ball punted out of bounds if you're going against elite returner or TCU and they got the best kickoff team in the country, and it's, man, making sure that we're kicking the ball where it needs to get kicked, because if you're a hair off, you really put the team at a great disadvantage. So I do think it's more than just, hey, scheme, or there's so much situational football that comes into, I think, special teams. And again, 17% of the game is played there, but those plays are so critical. That's why it's not just scheme, it's not just, it's personnel, it's situation, and then it's scheme. Yep. Thanks, guys. Thank you.